Welcome to Black Unquiet Minds, the podcast that amplifies the voices of individuals from diverse backgrounds as they bravely share their stories, struggles, and hopes for a better future. I'm your host, Marius Lancaster, and in each episode, we delve into the depths of intersectional identities and the challenges faced by those living in America. Today, I'm extremely excited to introduce you all to tonight's guest and someone influential in my own journey. She is a current first-generation double degree holder with a BS in finance as well as a still fresh MBA. She's been a governmental employee here in Cincinnati for the United States Postal Service for over a decade and has been a single mother for even longer. This woman instills inspiration in myself whenever we speak, and I'm glad I've had the opportunity to have her in my life for the entirety of my life. All that said, I have the utmost pleasure of bringing on my oldest sister, Erica, to the podcast today. All that said, sis, to get us kicked off today, I have to start us off on a heavy hitter. As the eldest of 6 kids, just on our mother's side alone, expectations could not have been easy to deal with. And even now, I think as the oldest of us, you are certainly held to a higher regard in some aspects. Could you speak on how some of those expectations and early experiences have shaped your perspective and experience growing up as a woman of color in our society, especially considering you're a mother yourself now to my wonderful niece?
Absolutely, and thank you for that intro and inviting me on your show. As you stated, I am the oldest of 6 on our parents' side, and I am I'm oldest of roughly 15 on my other side. So being a first generation college student and having so many eyes on me with no guidance, I had a tremendous amount of pressure on me to live up to expectations I did not agree to. Couple that with being undiagnosed with ADHD, it was a recipe for failure. And I failed the first time around. And because I was held to such a high regard, I couldn't get the help I was expected to figure it out on my own, essentially, and succeed. And when I didn't, I was shamed for it. And coupled that with a failed marriage, being homeless and jobless while pregnant, and up until my child was about 2 years old, I folded under pressure. I it was I was now faced with being the stereotypical baby mama on welfare and living in the projects, and that took a major toll on my mental health. And once again, I was in a position where I had someone to look to me to succeed, and I didn't have anyone to guide me without shame and ridicule. Fortunately for me, I was able to get a job at the post office where I was able to find the college, Capella University. It's an online school, so I was able to get my BS in finance, in my MBA while working and being a mother. So now, after I'm graduated, I am now faced with the challenge of balancing being a single mother and climbing the corporate ladder.
Gotcha, and I definitely appreciate all of that. If anything, I've definitely been privy to a lot of your struggle and the things that you've had to go through, especially growing up alongside you. But as we speak to some of your adult experiences, those are some that, if anything, I was kind of sheltered from, just in the way that we grew up. And I really want to touch just a little bit more on the experiences that you dealt with being homeless. I think in our family, especially as large as it is, we always try to open up our houses and our homes, wherever that will be, for each other when we kind of fall down. I know I lived with you for a good year and a half when I was trying to get up on my feet, moving back from Columbus after working in the medical marijuana industry. And if anything, that wasn't the first time that I came to live with you. That was definitely something that I've had to do multiple times in my life, and I'm not the only one in our family that has had to do that. And I'm just if anything, a little curious as to you being the person that you are, and knowing that you've opened up your home so many times to all of us. Why do you, I guess, why do you feel that you were in a situation where you were homeless and pregnant?
So, during that time, I was married and I was working part time, and I was going to school part time at University of Raymond Walters, and I was doing a pre med program. My marriage failed tremendously, and I was stuck. Like, I couldn't turn to my family because I had that expectation of, you're going to succeed and you know what you need to do to go do it. And there's the other stigma of being a black woman, and when you tell people I'm not okay, I need help, they really don't hear you. It was more so of a, oh, it'll work out, it'll get better, y'all get back together. And even when people were helping me move out of the apartment that I shared with my ex-husband, people still didn't believe it. They're just like, okay, well, when are you and your husband going to get back together? No one really fully like believed that, hey, she's not okay. She really needs help. She doesn't have it together, and she's failing. And so I found myself in a situation where I was homeless, and because I was married, I couldn't get the assistance that I really needed because I wasn't believed by the system, because people actually do scam the system by trying to get those low income households and get the food stamps and cash assistance. So it took a while for me to get that assistance. I didn't get housing until my daughter was 2 years old. So, but I mean, I was able to stay with different family members, but when you don't have your own address, you're technically are homeless. I wasn't sleeping on the streets, but I didn't have any stable place that I can live.
Gotcha. And I definitely understand, if anything, being an adult these days, just trying to find a place to really be able to stabilize, to be able to kind of decompress and come home to at the end of the day, knowing that this is your space. This is where you can actually unwind, where you can actually get work done. If you are a spiritual or a religious person, where you can actually worship. Like, there are a lot of things that people take for granted when it comes to just having a home. Me, myself, jumping from apartment to apartment, doing a lot of college living, I haven't really had the opportunity to kind of stay in one place for too long. Yeah. And I hearken back to the days of being in, it's a little funny when I think about your house, because it is our childhood home at the end of the day. But I hearken back to the days of when that house really was full of everyone. One of the things that I loved about our home was, even though it's definitely a smaller home, what is it, a four bedroom? Even though it's a 4-bedroom house, and like you said, there's 6 of us, and then our 2 parents, eight people in a 4-bedroom home. Like, you can only imagine. And the thing is, I would always go from room to room, and there's always someone there. Yeah. But the thing that follows you with that is there's always like love in that next room. Right. And I've noticed that I've missed that, especially living on my own and not being able to have a home, being pregnant, essentially getting ready to start a new family, knowing that you don't have that safety net, that security. I can only imagine how difficult it must be to have gone through that process. And one of the things that I really want to talk about, you speak on your undiagnosed ADHD. When it came to mental health in our family, I feel like I was one of the early adopters of getting help.
Yeah.
And that was definitely because I think the times changed around what mental health could be and what it really meant in our communities as a whole, especially in the Black community. And our parents were definitely more receptive to, if anything, seeking out treatment and help for me, whereas they weren't necessarily in your situation.
Right.
And knowing that you had to deal with that, and knowing that you had to, if anything, figure out and kind of, I hate to say self-diagnose, but that's what a lot of people end up having to do is they just, it's trial by fire and trial by error. They're just almost, self-diagnosing themselves. So can you just elaborate a little bit more on how you went through that process?
As far as like being undiagnosed until the age of 35?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, as far back as I remember, in grade school, I knew something was wrong with me, and I knew something was wrong with me by the way teachers would treat me. So I had to go to a special education class because I just wasn't up to par with my peers. And couple that with our dad being in the military, we would change schools in the middle of the school year, and then we would go to a completely different state. And every state, county, or whatever is not on the same exact curriculum. So I would completely miss large portions of our education. So I remember being in the class with people for special education, and the people in our regular class took an open book test, and the people in the special needs class weren't allowed to take open books tests. We had to figure it out on our own, and I was the only one who passed the test. Then when we moved back to Cincinnati, I had teachers who knew something was wrong with me. I never forget, I had a teacher named Ralph Kemphouse. In a parent-teacher conference, he told our parents, when I ask her a question, it takes her a little bit of time to come to the answer, but she always has the right answer. So with that is, I'm trying to focus on what you're saying and remember the question and answer it. So with girls being undiagnosed with ADHD, because we're not hyperactive and rambunctious like boys, we're dismissed. And it was primarily studied in boys. So our hyperactive usually shows up in being hyper-focused, being chatty Cathys, just what people call space cadets, where I will always lose things. I couldn't remember conversations, or I'll go off on a tangent or something like that. So when I got to college, I couldn't focus. And I was a pre-med student taking biology class. My teacher was from Belgium. So couple that with being in a PWI, in a private PWI at that, where my classmates came in with advantages that I did not have, and being a minority in that, I couldn't succeed at all. It was a recipe for disaster. And then we had parents who didn't believe in labels. So it wasn't oh, my child actually needs help. It's stop being lazy, figure it out, and get it done. So I was put in a situation where I could not succeed at all. So I did flunk out of Hanover. I transferred to UC and ended up getting pregnant with Anna. So that was just a situation where I couldn't really go on. So when I started Capella, I had the advantage of being online, so I was doing everything on my own pace, so I didn't have the extra distractions. If I did get distracted, then I can come back to it and not miss anything. Or like when we had reading material, I can read and listen to it, so I'm retaining it because I'm hearing it multiple times. So if I miss something on the first time, I got it on the second time. But there was the issue of, like, I was drinking to write papers because being drunk helped me concentrate. And I know, and it wasn't until my MBA program that I'm just like, something is wrong with me. and I can't keep this up. So I talked to it with my primary care physician, and he told me, I do not believe that you have ADHD because you have done so well in school. And people who have ADHD typically don't do well in school. And I said, because I was an alcoholic, essentially. Mm-hmm. People do great things when they're drunk. Yeah. So I took the survey, and he still didn't believe me, but I got on the Adderall. And I was doing well until I had COVID and lost my memory. But even now, it's just, I notice I'm more aware of myself. I'm not masking anymore. And I know what the signs and symptoms are and how to compensate for that.
Mm-hmm. One of the central themes that I feel like I hear with a lot of people when I talk to them about their educational background, especially individuals of color that have gone into higher education. I had the opportunity of studying at Ohio University for 4 years in person, getting my degree in Athens, Ohio. But I got my master's, completely remote. I was doing that online, kind of like you said, at my own pace. I was dealing with a laminectomy after I had a cyst removed from my spinal cord. And so after dealing with that laminectomy, going through, physical therapy for about a year and a half, it was the thing of I did that during my senior year. So I'm graduating, dealing with that surgery, going through physical therapy. Thankfully, I at the time had a lot of support around me, but it was one of those, I couldn't go into the job market in the traditional way that most people could because of COVID, as well as the injury. And I had to kind of fortify my skills, so that required me to go back to school. And being able to get that online degree, I think if the stars didn't align with, my surgery and COVID, everything like that, I don't know that I would have ever taken the opportunity to look into what an online degree entails. But the flexibility that it offers you, especially getting essentially the same level of education as other individuals, but just at your own pace, meeting you, if anything at heart, it really gets to that level of equity at the end of the day, because you're meeting people where they are and you're allowing them the opportunity and the resources to be educated, essentially on their own time. Yeah. And I think there was a lot of stigma around online degrees. And even when I was thinking about going to college, just online education overall. We've got our younger sister, she did most of her educational journey completely online. It's one of those, when she did it, it was heavily stigmatized. I remember even myself, like, I feel bad now, thinking about it. But even I talked down to her a bit about like that online education, because it was one of those where, like, are you getting like the social aspects and things like that of like interacting with classmates? And I do think that there's certain points to that. I definitely got an experience being on campus that I don't know that I would have gotten in that online environment if I would have did it for 4 years. Absolutely. But in terms of the educational resources that I got, at the end of the day, college to me, it is an educational institution, and you do get those educational resources and opportunities. Right. But you also get experiences from that in-person environment. Right. And I think at the end of the day, that's what a lot of people are paying for when you pay that really high price tag for those degrees. And most people don't understand that, especially people of color, because they think that you have to go to college in the traditional sense to get those educational resources, when you're really getting the experience. And what I've found out at those PWIs, a lot of time that those experiences aren't made for people like us. No. So if anything, it only makes more sense to get those educational resources for, the marginal amounts that they offer them in online curriculums, than to go to these PWIs and these institutions that, quite frankly, aren't built to support individuals of color.
You're right. I noticed there were times in class where we were given instructions on an assignment, And I didn't know that the assignment existed until the next day when we were asked to turn it in because I had ADHD. So I completely just blacked out, was on my space cadet tangent. Um, with being on campus, there's the relationships that you build with other people. You can have a good experience with building relationships with your professors, um, but I found with being online, I had better relationships with my professors. Um, with some of my classmates, it was we didn't make an effort, the relationship wasn't there, but I didn't feel like I missed anything because we did. There are networking opportunities, but we're all working it out. So we're here to get this education and connecting with our professors. But it just depends on what your major is and what type of person you are. One may work better than the other, but for someone like me, online school is really a necessity.
Okay, I gotcha. If anything, I'm definitely blessed to have had the opportunity to see both sides of the coin myself, and I do kind of share that sentiment that it does depend on the person ultimately. I think that education is a journey, and it really depends on your ability to sustain that. But I really want to say thank you for sharing, some of those experiences on our familial relations. I know it was touched on in a few ways through our conversation earlier, but as a woman of color, especially considering your educational background and where the majority of individuals, who share similar backgrounds to ourselves, how do you see a way forward with professional engagement in a world that is so inequitable? I know for myself, I can often feel jaded when thinking about the things that I must do to put myself ahead of my peers and the energy that I have to expend and the time that has to be used. Do you think there is just a generation of us like you and myself who have to work extremely hard and become extremely educated to make up for the gaps left behind due to inequality and inequity when it comes to education in this country and the opportunities that can stem from it, be it, that formal education at a 4-year institution or just having the ability to learn from someone who had that privilege rather than being first generation, as was our case?
So, yes, there that gap is there, that inequality is there, but you so there's this quote by Arthur Ashe, is my favorite quote, that says racism is not an excuse to not to do your best. And that quote means so much to me because yes, there is the inequality and inequity, but that doesn't mean that you're not capable of going out there and doing what you need to do to succeed and close that gap. Is it going to be hard? Are you going to be met with obstacles and people that stop you? Absolutely. But when you sit back and choose to make an excuse for yourself and feel sorry and do the self-loathing, you're not going to get there. So one thing I had to learn is how to network. And it was hard for me because I spent so much time masking my ADHD and I have a speech impediment. So I didn't want to show up in certain spaces, or I didn't have the confidence to show up in certain spaces being in it. And I had to learn that I'm not going to get where I want to go, and I'm not going to close that gap and create opportunities for my child in generations to come if I keep operating in a mindset of fear and in excuses. So I talked to my MBA capstone professor who was a project manager for over 20 years, and he advised me to join different project manager networks and groups and network. And by doing so, it opened up a world to me that I was not privy to before. So I was able to join groups for Black people and for people just in the project manage area, careers area, and just doing that network, I have the guidance that I never had. I'm able to meet people who have my same struggles, and they're executive director level, making over $250,000 a year in project management, and they're Black people, they're minorities, and it's just like we can do it, but we have to get over that imposter syndrome and the excuse of it's racism. I'm jaded, I'm jolted, and all that. You can't be like that. You have to change your perspective. You have to do better. So one thing I did, the other thing I did, which this is one thing that I always turn to, is reading and research. So two books that I read, and I know a lot of people were groan when they hear these books, but I read The Art of War and The 21 Laws of Power. So if anyone's familiar with those books, they really teach you how to be a bad person. But my perspective with reading those books are, because we were so sheltered, is I need to learn how to recognize these types of people and how to navigate these types of people. So with reading those books, I was able to build relationships and navigate people who would discriminate against me and not allow me into certain spaces because I am a Black woman or because I'm a mother. And by doing so, I have been able to get opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten a year or two ago. And by doing that, I feel like I'm setting the mold for other people, and I can help close that gap. And I also read Coretta Scott's book, My Life, My Love, My Legacy, and she comes from a generations of people who were uneducated. They were enslaved. Her sister, actually, her older sister, went to college before her, but she talks about going to PWIs and the struggle with that and being a teacher, and how, when you're a teacher, you have to spend a year in a classroom before you graduate. Because it was segregation, they wouldn't even allow her to go teach in the classroom. So she had to figure out other ways to navigate that. And one thing, part of her legacy she wanted to leave is the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And that center focuses on essentially closing the gap, creating resources and putting out information and knowledge for people and guiding people, so we will have a chance. So we'll know how to navigate these spaces. And, even in our own community, there's a young man by the name of Lawrence Kane. He started Abundance University, and he teaches financial literacy at CPS and Upward Bound even. So it's stuff like that where it's possible. We don't have to stay in a space of inequality and inequity, but we have to come together as a community. We have to support each other when these resources is out there, and we can't gatekeep. And that's a big thing with us. But it's possible. You're with 6 of us. Our parents who just have high school educations have 6 children who are college educated. So it's possible. Our dad talks about all the time the struggles he has as a Black man in corporate America, how he's just now getting to where he is, and he's more than capable of being there. He could have been there years ago, but because he didn't have the college education, they stalled him, but he had the experience and the intelligence to navigate the space. And now they're just now giving him the position. But it's there. We just can't make excuses and be jaded.
No, I would definitely agree. We have to stop with the excuses. even myself, when I talk about being jaded, it sometimes can feel difficult because of how monolithic it feels like our journey has to be to not even get to the top, but to get to an equal playing field.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that weighs on me the most.
Mm-hmm.
I even now, a lot of what you speak to, especially when you talk to Coretta Scott King, kind of trying to close the gap for individuals, and a lot of people of color kind of speak to working from the side of your desk, doing that work that you have to do outside of the time where you're signed up to work your 9 to 5 or your typical full-time job. I myself, I work a full-time job. I'm working on a 3rd degree now at this point, and I also volunteer because, there's a part of me that wants to still give back to the world in a way that doesn't engage with, corporate America or capitalism in the way that I just need to, as the young people would say, touch grass, And it's hard to think about all of the things that I have to do just to get on that, again, not that above anyone, but again, just that equal playing field. So when we talk about, I guess, not feeling jaded, I that's a little harder for me, and I'm still grappling with that as a younger man, and I hope as I get older and gain some more perspective, I can kind of lose that.
Yeah.
But as I still kind of struggle and fight and try to get to where I can be comfortable, I think that's the thing that I worry the most about. I see ways in which our younger generations, like I'm very envious of, my niece Anna when I think about her opportunities for the future and things like that. But I think about what my opportunities are because of kind of where I fell. In between what we needed as a country and what we're going to pay for as a country. And when I think about educational opportunities right now, my employer, again, the degree that I'm getting is fully funded. It's free. It's offered to entry-level employees. One of the things that I talked with you about is I would love to get Anna over to my employer as soon as, she's ready to get out of, either if she decides to go the route of college or trade school, whatever she decides to do at that point. But just to save her some funds in the long run, go work as you're going to school, because it might be harder. You won't get that like in-person experience, but as we already noted, some of those PWIs aren't meant for us in the first place for that in-person experience. And you already said you can have a really rewarding relationship with your professors and getting those resources even online. So if you go that route, not only are you saving your money, but you're also making money at the same time. And I think that's really important and shouldn't be lost at all. And so when I think about our younger generations, I'm beyond excited about the opportunities that they are going to have in the future. But when I think about myself and being signed up for the loans and being as financially illiterate as I was at the time, it's hard to even believe that I have, financial licenses under my belt. When I think about all of the financial debt that I'm in myself, like it's hard to actually conceptualize. And now that I'm in that point where I know what I'm in, it's almost like when you finally take off the blinders and you see like, okay, like I'm in the muck, like I'm in the filth, like, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get out, even with the tools that I have as a licensed rep. But I don't know how to get out of this. I don't think it was ever meant for people like us to get out of, because they were never meant for us to get into in the first place. And so now I'm just trying to figure out, now that we're changing these systems for our younger generation so that they're able to navigate them, how do people like, me and you in that almost lost generation navigate coming up and not feeling jaded about the opportunities, because I know it's a shift of perspective. Like, you really have to shift your perspective to, if anything, be happy for the people that are coming up with those opportunities. You know, you shouldn't be spiteful that you didn't have them. And I think that in our country, too often, when we talk about student loan debt and things like that, we often hear people say, well, it's not my responsibility. It's not my loans. It's not that. Again, we shouldn't be spiteful of the people getting those educational opportunities, because when you think of it at the end of the day, these are the same people that are going to be working alongside you in this country, making these technological advancements, you know, creating art, you know, creating entertainment. Like, they're going to be adding value to your lives. So why demonize them for getting educated? It's not like they were, like, you know, spending a bunch of money just buying clothes, cars, things like that. No, they were getting educated to, again, help the system. So I really don't understand why we cast so many stones at these people, and especially the individuals of color that this, for a lot of them, we're first generation. This was our first opportunity to see what we could do. So it's one of those, I don't think that we should attach so much of a weight when I think of that debt, that burden, to the point where these people can't live normal lives. I think about the things that I have to do. I'm working from my desk, or the side of my desk, not because not solely because I want to push everybody forward, but a part of it's because I have to, just to make ends meet.
Yeah, well, you know, I think my perspective is different because I am the oldest child. So the oldest child is essentially the test dummy. So because of my position, I don't look at younger generations and be upset because they have things that I don't have. Because, you know, I just think about, even with like my great grandmother generation, they didn't have indoor plumbing when they were children. So that's like them being mad at us because we have the luxury of having indoor plumbing. You shouldn't look at it from that perspective of, I'm upset because you have opportunities that I didn't have. I'm proud of you and I'm happy for you that you have those opportunities, and I want you to capitalize on this opportunity so we can keep this up. Because there's no reason for generations to be living in the projects, not have a 529 plan, not having life insurance, for God's sake. We need to stop this. We need to stop selling our properties. Keep our land. There's value in it. That's why people want to buy it. I hate to say this because I think about Dick Gregory when he said the cold concept of crabs in a barrel is not real because the barrel is not a crab's natural habitat. But that's really where that jaded mindset comes from with people when they see younger generations having opportunities that they didn't, is because with some people, other people's success highlight their inadequacies. So they have that feeling of being jaded, and it's just like, that's not necessary, because you not only you're creating a rift in our community that's not going to help us succeed. So when I see like my child's generation and what they're choosing to go to school for, the opportunities that they had, yes, I wish I was in Upward Bound. It would have helped me tremendously. I wish it could, because if I was in Upward Bound, more than likely I would have got the Bill Gates Millennial Scholarship. I was winner up. I would have got it. My education would have been fully paid for, no student loan debt ever. But I'm not going to be mad about that. So people have to change their mindset and learn how to congratulate each other, because you're not going to get anywhere doing that. And there's people who on my job who are older than me who give me backlash for having an MBA. But then when I'm on my way up, they're looking for a handout. And it's just like, when our younger, if we appreciate and congratulate and love on the younger generation coming up, they can bring us with them and not create that like, oh, I don't want to be involved with them. Because once we have that we continue that, then it's going to be it's going to be continue the cycle. So they're not going to show love because they don't know, they didn't receive that. So they're not going to show it to the younger generation. So we have to change that mindset. And it's a choice. You choose to be jaded. And people don't have to be that way. Yep, things weren't ideal, but think about the generations before you. They had it worse. So let's stop this.
No, I definitely appreciate that. And I know we have to wrap it up, but I want to, especially since you talk to the older generations, just kind of changing that mindset. One of the individuals that here in the past, I'd say the past few years, that has really touched my life, even though he's no longer with us, it was our Uncle Kelvin.
Right.
And one of the things that he said to me prior to his passing was just that, you're a very educated and intellectual young man, and I know that you're going to do great things, and I want to ride your coattails to the top. And all he did was spread love on me. And I know that when I do finally get successful, it's going to be because of those people that help put a lot into me. And at the end of the day, even if I don't get to be in the, I guess, the dream position that I ultimately saw as a young child, I do know that I am miles ahead of where a lot of individuals that look like me are. And by being, those miles ahead, I only have the obligation to help people in that race, and to show them like, hey, this is the path that you can navigate. I've come these miles and I know what this path looks like. At least let me show you what it takes to get to this point. And from there, the world is your oyster. So if anything, sis, I definitely could not have asked for a better dialogue, and I appreciate having a personally motivating guest here on for my second episode. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and further this conversation for others that might not be privy to our struggles.
Well, thank you for having me, and I wish you much success, because when your podcast hit big, I'm gonna ride on your coattail.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. Everybody, I've been your host, Marius Lancaster, and thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and never stop seeking the truth.